Hello, my name is Roderick Kiracofe. I am from California, United States. I have brought 14 quilts from my collection of quilts that I call Unconventional and Unexpected. Most of them are from the last half of the 20th century, some a little before the 1950s, but they're all pieces that I found that appealed to my eye. They were not made perfectly. They really excited me visually. This piece is just a real favorite. It's a yo-yo quilt, and I'm not a big fan of yo-yo quilts. They were made a lot in the US. They never had a backing. This is the first one that I've seen that the maker put a backing on it. So these are all appliqued onto it. And it's the first time that I've ever seen one arranged in this circular pattern like this. She cut out these roses out of just a commercial bedspread and appliqued those on. And then all of the yo-yos are handmade. But just how she placed the coloring in the circles, but she left this part open. I see these as just these yo-yos are flying out, but then she created these rings of different colors. And the wonderful thing about this piece is she signed it on the back in pencil. She wrote her name, her street address, this town, which is a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, 1964, and age 83. So her name was Laura Otto. I found her in the census records, but this was just such an amazing yo-yo quilt. This is the back of a quilt, and it's one of my favorite quilts, and it's just the back. I find it very painterly. It's 5 pieces of fabric that she chose to put on the back of her quilt. It's been interesting. There's been so much interest in this quilt because everyone wants to see the back. So I'm going to show you the back. So lots and lots and lots and lots of printed fabric next to printed fabric next to printed fabric. But then she put these solid colored diamonds in them that really breaks it up in a beautiful way. And I'll show you. The other side. But I just hadn't expected so many people to, what's on the back? And yesterday we had people starting to lift it up themselves, so we put some signs up, and I've said I'm happy to open it and show it for you. But I mean, I've known that almost any quilt show you go to, people will say, what's on the back? And they're often what we call quilt ladies with white gloves that will turn them over. But I just love the back of this quilt. Grandmother's Flower Garden was an extremely popular pattern in the United States. It's usually always in printed fabric, and then there's a border of that, this circular pattern, usually it's called a lime green, or Nile green, that's what they used for a grandmother's flower garden. So this is completely different. It's all solid fabrics. I see it as she's created a piece of art here. She's just taken the idea of grandmother's flower garden and taken it to a whole new level. It was found in Chicago. It was believed to be an African American maker. I have a name. I just have not been able to find her in census records. So I still have it attributed to her name is Donna Settles. I just have not been able to find her, which is often difficult with trying to place people through genealogies and census records. This was a quilt top that I found, and I've loved quilt tops. always feel like that they're an orphan child, that didn't get made. Love them just for the fabrics. And I had about 100 of them, and thinking, well, one day I'll do something with them. And it came to me after a number of years. I want to put these out into the world again. So I contacted some quilt makers whose work I really liked and other artists, and I offered them a quilt top or two. And one, they were in disbelief that I was giving them away. I said to them, you can do whatever you want with them. Hang it up in your studio, be inspired by it, cut it up, put it in a quilt, cut it up, put it on a painting, do whatever you want. This quilt top was sent to a quilt maker, Zach Foster, who was in Brooklyn, New York. He's now moved back to his home roots, which North Carolina, I believe. I watched him on Instagram starting to put letters on top of the top. And it's like, what is this going to say? What is this going to say? And he finally finishes it with, and this is why Americans can't have nice things. I was not familiar with the saying. Others are. He was familiar with it. And apparently it was a saying that people would use. If something went wrong, it's like, well, this is why Americans can't have nice things. So he put a backing on it and a binding, and then he contacted me and said, I don't know how to quilt it. I'm puzzled by how to quilt it. I said, well, have you ever thought of tying it? Because in binding this group of quilts that I call unconventional and unexpected, I found a lot of tops, or tied quilts, or sometimes they're called comforters. And I really like them, and particularly when they're just covered on the front with more ties than are needed to hold the layers together. So I just said, what about tying it? I didn't say do it, I just said, what about it? Have you thought about it? So he did, and I love how he did it. He did tie the whole thing, and what's on outside of the letters just disappears to me. I basically only see it in the letters, partly because of the dark background. But I love the effect that it has. From a distance, it can look like this is a printed fabric, but I love it that he tied it. I then said, what are you going to do with it? I can understand if you want to show it or whatever, but if you ever sell it, please give me first chance. So he thought for a while, and he decided, okay, I'm going to sell it. He offered me a price. I accepted it, and now it's back in the collection. But to me, it's just such a wonderful kind of circling of taking a piece from an unknown maker, a known maker, then adds their touch to it, and now it's back to me, and I'll hopefully place it in a museum. I love this quilt. I love all of them, but some I particularly are very, very fond of. This I found in Alabama. It's called Snake Trail or Rattlesnake. Often quilt patterns will have different names, but it wasn't trying to be made perfectly. This isn't straight across the bottom. This fabric, the Square Dancers, is the same fabric that was in the back of that quilt that we looked at the backing. They came from different places. It's always fun to find a fabric that gets used in another quilt. The way she used these are half circle blocks, and then depending on how you place them, is the shape that's going to happen. So using all green on this side, and she moves to this printed fabric down the center, and then over here she just mixes it up a little bit. And just how she placed a stripe or another print with it. I love it. So this pattern, often called teacups or coffee cups or just cups, I felt I had to bring it to England in calling them teacups. I've always loved this pattern, and I first saw it in a book from the Gail Vanderhoof, Jonathan Holstein exhibition at the Whitney Museum in 1971. Their quilt they found in Colorado, it was, all the cups were solid blue on a white background. It looked like pop art, just a very powerful graphic piece. And for 40-some years, I've been keeping my eye out for one, and just never saw one that was available for sale. This came to me, I don't remember now what year, not that long ago. It was found in Oklahoma. I love that there were printed fabrics and solids. This one blue cup is kind of an homage to their example, but I love it for kind of the pop art quality, just how she used the printed fabrics, make them look like china teacups. This appears to be a blank block, and I've always been fascinated with quilts that do have one blank block in them, but it's a very, very pale pink that I think has faded over the time, or just she may have put it in that pale. In the Barbara Brackman did an encyclopedia of patterns in the U.S., of pieced patterns. It's in there. The pattern shows the handle on the right, and the Holstein Vanderhoof quilt, the handle was on the right. These are on the left. Was she left-handed? We don't know, but just curious that she did the opposite way. So these are just a few of the 14 quilts that I brought to share at Festival of Quilts. It's been exciting for me to have people come in, be really excited about the quilts, give feedback, tell me how much they've enjoyed it. And so thank you.